Welcome to another episode of the Your Way podcast. So, back when this podcast was called the Embodied Life Coaching Podcast, or whatever it was called, something like that, you may remember that I had a fabulous guest on called Avril Brown. Well, I have got Avril back on today. And one of the main reasons why I've asked Avril back on is because she and I have been going through some pretty big shifts this year and previously, but there's an awful lot that has resonated between the two of us about what's been going on. And I just thought it would be lovely for us to have a conversation about it and to share it with you guys. So, Avril, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be back again.
It's so lovely to have you here. So, my understanding, because I love the fact that we're kind of catching up about this on a podcast, so I think it's brilliant, is that at the start, well, maybe for you at the end of last year, for me at the start of this year, some kind of big internal shifts happened. And for me, I kind of was dealing with my shifts or trying to move through my shifts whilst business as usual. And you took a different approach. So I would love for you to share whatever feels good about what happened, what you did, where you're at now, and then we can kind of go from there. No pressure.
Cool. Yeah. So I think it was about the beginning of all through last year, little bit by little bit, I started to feel like I was on a bit of a hamster wheel in my business. Like I was ticking off all of the shoulds that I should be doing in my business. You know, having an online business, showing up on social media every day, creating content for your audience, for your like ideal clients, doing all of this stuff and ticking all of the boxes. And I was ticking all of them because that's the kind of personality I am. If I'm told to do all of these things, I do them. And what I really found as the year went on was I felt my business was no longer my own. I felt like I was creating it for somebody else, for something else. And I really felt like I'd lost my passion and creativity for it. And I was more and more, the more people I listened to out there, because I didn't believe that I had any expertise when it came to the business side of things. I know my expertise when it comes to the actual coaching and working with people, but the business things wasn't really something I was interested in, except for as a way to support people, as a way to serve people. And so I was listening to so much information from all of these incredible coaches, really, really amazing people. But I was taking that all on board and trying to put me and my business into a box that fitted all of that. Yeah. And I think bit by bit, it just felt like I was fitting into a box, but I had lost myself and I'd lost my soul and I'd lost my heart and I'd lost my passion. I'd lost my love for what I did along the way. So then about September last year, I broke my foot. And it was a bit of a signal for me that I was on the wrong path and that I needed to make some changes. So I took a little step back with that, but I still tried to maneuver. I still tried to fit, into the box, but I just tried to shape the box a little bit differently. And as we came closer to the end of the year, I thought, this is not working for me. I want to be able to serve people in a way that feels sustainable for me. I felt like I was on my phone a lot more than I wanted to. I've got a 10-year-old and I homeschool. I didn't want to be spending so much time and energy in something that wasn't lighting me up. It felt like it was really draining my life force. So then towards the end of last year, it was just like I'd had enough. I went back to see my family on the other side of the world, and I just asked. I sat in meditation one day and I asked, what do I need to do? What's the next step I need to take, thinking it was a next step process. And like the answer came really clearly to me. You need to sort of burn it all to the ground. You need to step away. You need to step back. So I did, but I gave myself a month because I was still trying to control it. I thought, I'll give myself a month. That will be okay. I'll control it that way. And 1 month turned into sort of 5.5. And through that, I much more deeply connected to myself and to my values and to all of the things that I will not do in order to create a business, and you know, and in order to maintain a business, because I need something that feels both sustainable to me, because I know when I'm feeling lit up, that's when I can best serve people as well. And I came back very much with the attitude of, if I can impact one person's life today, whether that is in the online space, whether that is in my own home, whether that is with some stranger on the street, if I can impact one life today, then that's of service. Then that's not necessarily enough. I think it was, then that's enough for me. That's you know, that has the butterfly effect, rather than I have to be impacting 1,000 lives or 1,000,000 lives this year in what I was doing online. I took a much more, I guess you could say, smaller, but it felt like a really heart-led and soul-led position with the impact that I want to make and the service that I want to be of to the world. And really knowing that it has to come from me being nurtured first. And that, you know, and yeah, so that was my journey. And truthfully, Louise, I am still in a very messy place. It's because I've realized the mess doesn't go away. You know, every step along the way in our lives, in our businesses, in our parenting, in our relationships, there's stuff that comes up. You can call it mess, you can call it murkiness, you can, you know, do whatever you want, but it comes up to challenge us, to grow us, and to think that I was going to come back even after 5.5 months and suddenly be, you know, this totally clean slate where there was nothing coming up for me, would have been totally wrong. But I thought I would. I thought if I give myself enough time, I would come back, I'll be all sorted, and I'll know, you know, I'll have this clear path. And yeah, it's still messy, but I'm much more true to me.
I love that. And I think it's so easy for us to kind of, we don't do it on purpose, but to like go into this stuff to almost try and avoid the mess. Like if I can just clean all of this stuff up, then I'm never going to have to deal with mess again. And I remember my first coach talking about kind of life being messy and it always being messy. And this was back when I was like, I'm not saying that I'm not these things now, but like to a lesser degree, so controlled, so regimented. So like everything needs to be managed so I can be managed. And I remember her saying like things were always going to be messy. And I was like, no, that can't be right. But you're right, it is, but it is right. And I think once you kind of get to more acceptance, I think we probably still want to fight reality a bit, more acceptance of that, you can then kind of go with the ebbs and flows and just be a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how, you know, that the ego, the mind, it just, we want to control it. We want to give it 4 weeks. We want to make it be our most expansive self, but within the parameters that we kind of limit it to. And it just doesn't work like that. It's like the universe or source or whatever you want to call it just keeps saying, hey, this is not what it's about. You asked for surrender. You asked to be, you know, your best self. And this is, you know, you can't keep putting up these barriers to becoming that. And it feels like the more you say, I'm ready for the next step, the more it's kind of says to you, are you? Are you really? Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. So I was making various bits of notes as you were talking before, and there's a few different things I would love to come back to for my own personal interest, but also for the people that are listening. You said something that for me is like the crux of life, not to overstate it. And you said, I can't remember the first bit of the sentence, but you talked about you being nurtured first. And I would love to know, I guess, what that means to you and also what that looks like for you, because it'd be different for everybody. But I think we live in a world where, so I didn't say this at the start, and not everyone will have listened to our previous podcast. Avril is a coach who does similar work to me. I think that's fair in terms of like, so she's kind of trauma informed. She's got the kind of nervous system experience and other stuff. And you can sort of come and correct me with extra bits in a minute. Who you work with is different, but you're also a mum. You've said you're a mum to a 10-year-old, and we get an awful lot of messages about the fact that everybody else has to get put first. If your business isn't the most important thing to you, then you might as well go back to your 9 to 5. If, if you're not doing this, if you're not doing that, if you're not doing all of these different pieces, then like, who even are you? Do you even deserve to be here? But to get to that place of like, I need to nurture me first, it's actually quite a big deal.
Mm. It's a huge deal. And I think especially, I mean, I don't know about you growing up, but I know for me, I was really sensitive. I was highly aware of everybody else as I was growing up, everybody else's, mood, everybody else's needs. And so I think from a very, very young age, particularly females, we're conditioned to put other people ahead of us because that's what good girls do. You
Yes.
look out for everybody else. And and so as you get older and you move into a profession like coaching or something which is quite nurturing, you think that I need to be putting everybody else first. And there's so much, marketing out there about if you're really all in, this is about making your business the most important thing. But there's other parts of our lives as well. It's not just a business. There's our relationships, our marriage, our friendships, our children, if you're a parent. There's ourselves at the epicenter of it all. And not one of those other things thrives sustainably while we don't nurture ourselves. And when I say like, because people can have amazing businesses, I see them all the time. People have amazing businesses, but they will often burn out. So their
Yeah.
business might be thriving, but they're not. And I really think we're moving away from all of that sort of hustle culture to actually recognizing that our lives are very short in the big picture, and we have to really nurture ourselves and whatever it is, our passions, our desires, our families, all of the things that are really matter to us in a way that is sustainable. And it's never going to be sustainable if we don't first look after us. And so for me, nurturing myself, it starts with a deep self-connection. So I need to be able to hear what my body is saying to me, preferably while it's whispering before you need to break a foot. but honestly, preferably while it's kind of whispering these nudges, and it does it so subtly. And we're so conditioned to not listening to it. We don't even listen when we need to go to the toilet, when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, those real basic things. And so for me, nurturing myself starts with those basics, and that's the foundation. And then on top of it comes all of the other stuff. So yeah, like I said, the basics are the eating nourishing food that feels good, not just what somebody told you that you should be eating, what actually feels good for your body. And this, again, we have to learn, what is that like for me? Does this, okay, I know kale is supposed to be amazing, but actually, does this feel good for me or not? And same with whether we take supplements or what amount of rest do you need. Just because people say 8 hours a night, you might actually need 9. You might thrive on 7, and we have
Yes.
to really,
Yeah.
and it comes with, we have to learn to listen to ourselves. So that's my first thing, is always the self-connection. And then for me, this year, it looked like really toning everything down. Bit like we just talked about before we came on here, with to do with the exercise. Like, I toned everything. I love climbing mountains and hills and stuff, and I toned that right back, and I started getting into a lot more yin yoga, just really restorative practices and staying in poses. And I'm not really flexible kind of yoga person. I'm just, but I love yin yoga, and going on really gentle walks in nature, and
Nice.
my body in a really nurturing way and listening to it. And same with the food, spending time with loved ones, just really tuning into how is my nervous system in any given moment, and noticing that it was definitely popping in and out of dysregulation way more than I ideally wanted it to be last year, and just reflecting on what caused that, and how, noticing how it is now, and how I can bring it back to a more regulated state. And I think just really for me, focusing on my values, what are my priorities,
Yeah.
and they're not the same as everybody else, and really honoring that. And it's
Yeah.
okay that they're not the same as everybody else.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think, and you can, I mean, please feel free to disagree with me, but for me, when you've got all of that noise out there about everything that we should be doing, about what success should look like, all of the things that we need to do, when we're tuned into that rather than tuning into ourselves, we do create this disconnect with our values, whether or not we see it. Because it's like, well, these are the things that matter to me, but I'm now trying to put myself and do all of these things over here because this person's told me that this is what I need to do if I'm, to be taken seriously or to be successful. And actually, when we get back to that place of, okay, no, I'm connecting in with me, I'm connecting in with what I need, with what my body is saying. And I love what you said about kind of, do I need to eat? Do I need to drink? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? Like all of that stuff. Because that's places where I will often start with like people on masterclasses when they've got no idea what their needs are. Like just start with the basics. Once we can get back into being super, super clear of, no, this is what matters to me. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do, which I would kind of badge in a sort of self-trust badge, put in a
Mhm.
self-trust box. Um, then we can start leading lives that are authentic. We're not then conflicting with our values, and things get to flow much more easily. I think it's super, super challenging because your own connection to self has got to be so strong to battle against, quite frankly, the fucking nonsense noise that is
Mhm.
out there,
Mhm.
been like, if you're not watching this on YouTube, but like just trying to eat us all day long.
Mm. And do you know what I think is? I think, and I noticed this for myself, I actually thought I wanted something different
Mm,
than I really did want, because
yeah.
that noise is so loud and has been going on for so long for most of us, that when you ask most people what do they want, they think they want something different. And this was me. You thought you wanted something different than you actually want when you peel all the top layers away and get down to what is a life well lived for you. What does that look like?
Mm,
And that's really confronting, because it's like a whole identity, a part of your identity has to fall away, because it's like,
yes.
that's what I thought I wanted, and now it's not. So what do I actually want?
Mm,
And it can be scary, because you're facing your own identity and going, I don't even really know what I want anymore, because
yeah.
what I wanted and who I thought I was wanting that
Mm,
no longer exists. If I
mm,
don't want that, so who am I and what do I want? So it's like these layers of identity work come up
mm,
when we
yeah.
look at the basics of what do we actually want. And
Mm,
when we talked, you mentioned about values there. People talk about the values all the time. And freedom and connection and authenticity. And And I would argue that most people talk about these as words that sound great, but they're actually not embodying them every
mm,
single day.
mm,
And because they're kind of fancy words that we all hear now, and they're kind of catch cries that everyone says they want freedom. But it shouldn't be something we're wanting in 20 years' time, because we actually have a huge amount of freedom on any given day, but we give it away for the freedom that we think we're going to have in 20 years' time. And it's the same with authenticity. And yeah, it just really makes you think when you stop and think, actually, am I doing the same, or am I living the values that I think are my values? Or what actually am I living?
yeah, because it's challenging when it's like, well, am I actually part of the problem? So I will share my thing in a minute, but I would love for
Mhm.
you to share, like, what shifted for you? Like, what did you think you wanted? What did you then realize you wanted? What did the transition look like? Um, yeah, let me not make
Yeah.
it too many parts of a question.
So yeah, no, so definitely for me, I thought I wanted, when I was in the coaching world, I wanted like 10K months. I wanted a six-figure business. I wanted to impact so many lives.
Mm,
I want, but I didn't want those before I got into the coaching space.
mm,
I got caught up in the noise of that. And what the transition came, it just felt there was such deep inner conflict. I felt like I was always fighting myself. I felt like there's two parts you talked about earlier on, of they just that there's the noise out here and there's your deep connection to yourself. Well, for me, that felt like a lot of inner conflict. It was like deep down, I knew I didn't want that. I wanted sustainability. Yes, obviously, I want my business to be viable, but I don't want to sacrifice what matters most along the way. I don't want to burn out. I don't want to lose myself. I could say these in more positive terms. I want to maintain a deep connection with myself. I want to maintain a deep connection with the people that I love the most. I want to be there for my child. I mean, he's 10. We've got about 8 more years. I've spent, initially I went on my healing journey to heal for him, so that I would be a better mom for him. And all of a sudden I found that my business was kind of pulling me away from that. I want to be available for him. I want to nurture my marriage. I want to actually smell the roses and live this life, and those are the things I really got back down to the foundations of what do I really want. And I sometimes take myself into a future sort of visualization or meditation where I go into that 80-year-old version of me, and I look back and I think, well, what will I look back and reflect on as a life well lived? And it sure as heck isn't hustling after a certain amount of money. Now, I'm not negating the fact that we need to pay bills in this world that we live in, because we do. But putting a monetary figure just to earn a monetary figure, as opposed to allow me to have, my bills paid and allow me to have a sustainable life, is very different than I need to earn a certain amount just to say I'm earning a certain amount. If that makes sense.
And it does make perfect sense. And I think the drivers are very interesting, right? Because I realized in February I had one of my worst ever months in my business, and I very quickly grew to a 6-figure business, and for a period of time was like, I want a 7-figure business. And I joined this I spent $25,000 in January 2021 on a 6-month group mastermind. Avril, there were like 100 people in this mastermind. It was ridiculous. And I completely drank the Kool-Aid and was like, I'm going to do this like lifetime access program, and I'm going to build it so there's like hundreds and thousands of people in there, and then it's just going to make me all this money, and this is going to be the model. And it was so deeply disconnected to me and what I want, because the work that I want to do, I want to work like with the depth of people. Like, I love group work. I don't want hundreds of people in a group. I want to know deeply each person's nervous system. I want to know their partner's names. I want to know their kids' names. I want to know what's going on for them at work. Like, I want to be able to work with that level of person. And so I have this massive disconnect in myself of what I was trying to do, what I actually wanted to do. But it was interesting. So then last year I completely revamped my business model. Love all of my offers. Love all of my offers. But in February, when I had this really bad month, and it coincided with, I had a load of work done on my teeth. I'd had the tax bill the month before. My sister had suggested that I paid extra money into an ISA, and I hadn't really, lots of lessons learned, but I hadn't really looked at like, well, how much available cash have I got at the moment? And when it came to February and me paying my bit into the joint account, because that's how we do it, we both pay the same into a joint account each month. I just felt my nervous system go. I was like, it is going to completely send me over the edge to put this money in the joint account this month, because like all of this stuff had happened. All of these clients had said they couldn't pay their bills. And for the first time ever, I asked my husband to pay my amount into the joint account, which for some people is like no big deal. But I made a promise to myself when I was very little that I was not going to rely on anyone for money ever. And it was one of the hardest, like, I even feel emotional talking to you about it now. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had, to just say, will you support me? Well, I'm finding this really hard. And I knew in the moment, sometimes stuff happens and you're like, this is going to be really painful, but it's going to be one of the most important lessons I can ever learn. I realized that what the money that I'd made, I'd gone from successful lawyer to successful coach, everything was still wrapped up in, I need to earn the right to exist. And that was one of the most profound. And I'm not saying that I've worked it all the way through. The next layer's been peeled back. I'm sure there'll be many other layers. But to then get to this place of, okay, but if I'm not pushing or chasing or trying to earn the right to exist or trying to do all of these different things, how do I then show up in my business? What does that look like? And for me, it wasn't about, oh, I need to step away, I need to change my offers, because I like what I've got, like, is aligned with where I'm at. But actually, it was about recalibrating how I wanted to do it, what I made it mean about me, and all of these different pieces. And that really did require a lot of, I'm going to stop listening to a lot of the noise out there, because the noise out there is shaming me, or I'm being, I'm perceiving is shaming me and making me wrong for not wanting to push and hustle and strive so much to just be.
Mm. And it's really interesting that you say that, because I think there are a lot of people who are driven by their own healed wounds. A lot of people, and I don't need, they don't have the awareness that you have. This is actually what's driving me, that desire to be seen, to prove that I'm of value. I've seen this coming up myself, is that this thing to prove that I'm of value. And I can see it, but sometimes it sneaks in there. It's really really interesting how our businesses can bring up so much for us.
Yeah, massively, absolutely massively. So I would love to know a couple of other things, and then I would actually love to hear, because I think you've had a little bit of a pivot in the work that you do. From what I've seen, we haven't talked about it, so we can just talk about it on here. If you were going to share any of the lessons that you learned, or like takeaways from giving yourself 5.5 months off, because we're different, but also we're kind of similar. And I imagine it was kind of challenging Avril, to take the time off. Yeah, let's start there.
It was really challenging, because a bit like you with your husband and asking for money, for me there was a big challenge around that, because I had been a stay-at-home mom before I set up my coaching business, for the first 6 years of our son's life. I did go back to work initially a little bit after he was when he was a year, and then I sort of resigned because it wasn't a suitable job for having a child. I worked in the mental health field, and so I'd been that stay-at-home mom, and I didn't want to go back there again. I was brought up with I was brought up in a family of girls, and like my parents sort of said, one thing was like, don't become dependent on a man. This is not for you. Now there was 6 girls, so it was quite a strong message of all of my sisters are really successful career-wise. And so for me, and I'm the only one who's taken this length of time off to be a stay-at-home mom. And so for me, taking this time off at the beginning of the year felt like I'd gone really backwards, felt like I was dependent on my husband again. And that in itself was really confronting, but it was so beautiful for me to allow myself to be supported by him, and to sort of open up to receiving that, because in that it deepened our relationship, because it allowed him to also be received in the supporting. And I think we worked through the masculine and feminine in a much more harmonious way, because I was like allowing him to do the supporting, rather than putting up the brick wall of, this is what I do and I can do blah blah blah. And so it allowed him an opening into into being the supporter as well. So yeah, I went through that as well. And it's really fascinating. It's a fascinating journey, but it has definitely deepened our relationship in that, because it allows, many of our men want to do that nurturing. They want to be, that role of support, but we often don't let them in.
Yeah, this sounds familiar.
Yeah, and so we're the male and we're the masculine and the feminine, but they want to be able to be there for us in the strength, but they can't if we just keep pushing them away. So, and it doesn't mean we all have to just give up our jobs and be fully supported, but it does allow I always think I guess this is the one of the things that I would love to offer people is that any limitation that comes up, any challenge that comes up, it's always an opportunity to deepen your relationship with yourself and to open up to asking, what is the lesson here for me, rather than fighting it, which so many of us have a tendency to do, me included, fight it, resist it, push it away, rather than actually opening up and leaning into it and saying, what is the lesson here for me in this? How can I how can I deepen my relationship with myself? What else can I learn? What else can I allow somebody else to learn? Because we're all co-creating in the world. And that was the other thing that I really learned, was the co-creation of how my life co-creates with my husband's and with our sons. But even on the bigger scheme of things, how we all collectively, our lives are all like cogs in everybody else's wheels. And every move one of us makes impacts somebody else. But we don't always know it. We don't, because we're so caught up in our own little worlds. And I think that was one of the things that taking that step back really allowed me to see more clearly, was we all have a role to play, and we're not here to play somebody else's role. We're here to play our own role, and to really trust that that is enough in whatever form it takes.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. And then this is a good one that you said before. You said you were clearer on all the things I will not do to build and maintain a business. So what are you no longer here for?
Okay, I won't sacrifice my time with my child. I won't sacrifice my marriage. If it falls apart for other reasons, then worst case scenario, then that's what happens. But not because because I've gone so much into my business that I've sacrificed everything. I won't sacrifice my health. I'm not going to burn out, and I will not sacrifice my soul, my passion, my creativity, for how things should look. I won't sacrifice my authenticity. It's what comes from me is going to come from me, and if that's not received, if that's not enough, then that's okay, because that's my stuff. But it is who I am is enough. If it's not received because the word, social media or whatever, it doesn't tick the boxes, then so be it. But I'm not going to mold myself and put myself into a box. I'm not here to fit in a box. Nobody's here to fit in a box. And I'm not going to put myself in a box just to be successful. Because what is success? I mean, I think we all need to look at actually what does success mean for us? Because, like you said, it's going to be different for me than you. Yeah, it's going to be different for somebody else than because we all come in with our own experiences and our own core wounds and our own reasons, our own why. Yeah, but we have to get really clear on defining it for us.
Yes.
Yeah,
and allowing it to change.
Yes. Oh yeah. Because it's easy to think that what you wanted 2 years ago is what you're going to want forever, and actually, no.
Yeah, and it's okay to say, oh, I've changed my mind. I did a program earlier this year called The Way of the Dragon. It was brilliant. It came at the most perfect time. And it was kind of based loosely on kind of Buddhist teachings. So it talked about is
that with Simone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that and it was very interesting because she talked about kind of pushing and chasing, and if we're not pushing or chasing, then what are we? And it's just like it was like we're being, and she did that program when I was really in it, And I
Mm-hmm.
joined, and I was part of that because I'm part of her home program. I joined Joyful
Mm-hmm.
Marketing years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, didn't resonate with it at all. Joined it and was like, this is not what I got promised.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's been interesting to watch her evolve and change, and me then feel more aligned to what she's doing. But so anyway, Way of the Dragon, so interesting to get to that place of being more authentic. And I listened back to one of the calls on Friday, and she said, and I might hash this up a little bit, but she said something along the lines of, one of the greatest gifts I ever gave myself was to be willing to be hated for who I am instead of wanting to be loved by who I thought I needed to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes, hard.
Oh, really? Honestly, I can feel my stomach kind of clenching as you say that, because it's like like logically, and I can just say yes. I know that feels, and I can feel there's a fire inside me going yes, yes. But I can also feel my stomach clenching, going oh, that feels really hard.
Yeah, because it's like, but can't I be my authentic self and then everybody just accepts me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so true. It
Mm,
is so true. But again, it's confronting. It's because we just want to, I mean, and it's so primitive. Of course we
mm,
want to be liked, because when we're
yes.
liked, we're part of the tribe.
Mm,
I
yeah.
mean, that's that survival thing of nobody wants to be kicked out of the tribe. And
Mm,
we have this authenticity or connection, and it's a balance. And yeah, but I think you get to a point more in your life where you're like, I'm just not sacrificing myself
mm,
for, even if I don't fully know who that myself is, I'm not
mm.
sacrificing that
Yeah.
for likes and follows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is brave work, and it goes against the norm. But I think for those who are like, this is my path, there
Mhm.
isn't really another way.
Mm. No, no, and it's, but you kind of want, like, I want someone to have marked out the way for me, because that would be really easy. You know, if you just give me the 5 step, because I can follow processes. If you just give me the 5 step process, I could follow it, but then that's not my way. Because that's the whole point. There isn't
Yeah.
the 5 step process, because yours is going to look different than mine.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest things, to let go of the plan. Like, I had a call with a lady on Friday to talk about maybe doing some work together. And she's like, how do you do it? Do you set like down a plan for me? Or do we just talk about, what's going on for me, like when I come to the session? And I was like, my preference is definitely the second
Mm.
option. I said, how can we prepare a plan for you? We don't know where we're going.
Mm.
But that's
I know.
hard.
It is. It is
Mm,
really hard. And I think it's different. Most people are used to very much a scripted,
mm,
plan.
mm,
And our brains can make sense of that. So it's like, yeah, if it's written there in a script, then I can make sense. I just do step A, B, C, D, E, F, and then that's the end of session. Okay, and I come back next week, and there'll be the next 5 steps. But, and I think this is going back to the nervous system work. This is a big part of it, and
mm,
just generally healing is, it isn't a straightforward 5 step plan. It's continually
mm,
tuning in. It's like, whoops, here I am, I'm in freeze again. Okay, need
mm,
to work my way through that. Thought I got, I thought I was on step 10, but actually
mm,
I'm back here on step 1 again. But
mm,
I'm actually 10 steps further along.
mm.
And it's, yeah, it's the same with all of our paths. And I love that you go with option 2 of, let's just see how what you come to me with on any given day, because that's exactly how I flow as well. And it's often really interesting, somebody thinks one thing is the problem, and actually when you start unpeeling the layers, something really different underneath it all.
Yeah, which is why it is so helpful to have someone to help you unpick the layers, because otherwise it can be like, well, this is my problem. This is the thing that I
Mm,
need to work on, and I need to try and figure it out on my own because I'm so hyper independent. And then you actually have someone to help you peel back the layers, and it's like, oh, I
mm,
still think I need to earn the right to exist. This is
mm.
also,
Yeah, yeah, I know, because we just, yeah, and I mean, it's our brain is just trying to keep us safe. It's doing a wonderful job, and some of our brains
yeah,
are super, super at it.
yes,
Um, yeah, and and having somebody there does really help. But life is going to keep showing us. It can we have our eyes open enough? Another big thing that came up for me this year was along the lines of, that worth, what, I was that fear of fear of rejection, and reflecting on all of the places in my life where I had not only been rejected, but also rejected myself. And seeing how that plays out when you then have an online business, it's really fascinating of, the layers with that. It's, yeah. I mean, life will always show us. It's just how open we are to receiving the messages it gives.
Yeah. Yeah. And I often say to clients about, follow where life is leading you, but you're right, you've got to be able to see the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. There are loads of them, and especially now, I think, I don't know about you, but it feels like life has picked up a pace in the last few years of, there's breadcrumbs, there's breadcrumbs everywhere. You really can't miss them unless you got your head so far up in the clouds or something, but they're everywhere. Life is confronting, and there's just so many opportunities given to us on a daily basis to peel back the layers.
Yeah, there are. And I think I agree with you, but I also think that you see the breadcrumbs everywhere because of the nervous system work that you've done. I think a lot of people spend most of their time, well, you say head in the clouds, I'm more like down in the I think some, you do have, there is a certain amount of work that has to be done before you can see all the breadcrumbs, I think sometimes. Because when you're on that hamster wheel, churn, just trying to get through life, you don't necessarily see what's there.
That's a really good point, because I know I spent a very, very long time in a functional freeze, and life felt, actually, when I reflect, life felt kind of cruisy back there. There was no I wasn't seeing any breadcrumbs. There wasn't stuff to heal. There wasn't any, my life felt nowhere near as messy, which seems ridiculous.
No, I know.
Yeah, but it was just, you just kind of got on with everything. You just pushed through everything. And but I was so disconnected, from myself, from the world, from people, and I had no idea.
Yeah, but that is the kind of choice, isn't it? Because you're right, in many ways. Like my husband says to me sometimes, because he's kind of on this roller coaster of fun, and he's like, there really are some benefits of just being in freeze, though, aren't there? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
But you don't get to feel alive. You said before, at some point, you felt like you were detached from your life force. This is how we connect back to our life force. It's not always easy.
No, it isn't. But it feels a lot fuller. Like life actually feels like there's some fullness in it. When I think back to, like, whenever I, like, this was something I just touched on over the last year, but when I go back to all of the years I spent in the deep freeze, so to speak, there was no real joy there either. There was no real passion. Like, when I get really excited about something, like really passionate, it's like really consuming. It feels really fiery inside me. I didn't have any of that. It was kind of like someone had, like, put the flames out, and so when the flames are there, it can feel really, really big, and it can feel really messy, and it can feel like life is really larger than life. But that is incredible, because it also feels like life is very full. Everything, everything has meaning. Like the sun twinkling on a leaf has meaning. The water sitting on, raindrops on grass, everything just feels, I see it all now, whereas I didn't for a very long time. And so there are benefits of freeze, but it makes for a pretty dull life.
Yeah, totally agree. So as we come to the end, actually, there's something I would like to say. One of the things that I have loved since you have come back is the realness of your posts on Facebook. So when you send me links, make sure there's one to your Facebook, so people go into the show notes and go and follow Avril on Facebook, because if you weren't like real, real, raw, vulnerable, like the stuff we really need to be thinking about rather than like the glossy marketing shite. That is most of the stuff. Go and check out Avril stuff. It's absolutely brilliant. And I would love for you to finish with just saying a little bit about actually where these shifts have taken you in terms of the work that you're doing now. So if people want to go and would like to come and work with you, would like to have a conversation with you, where? What does
Yeah.
Avril out of the box look like from a work perspective?
So, do you know, it is still evolving. I am still
Mhm.
evolving. So the basis of my work is still the same in that, like, the foundations are the nervous system work,
Mhm.
because I think that's so important. But I'm now working more with entrepreneurial moms,
Yeah.
to create, I call it success on their terms.
Mhm.
So where you have a harmonious balance between life and business and your dreams and desires, because a lot of
Mhm.
moms put those dreams and desires on hold. They just block them off because it's a bit selfish, to
Mhm.
have those dreams and desires as a mom. But it's where you can have a balance between, you know, desires, aspirations for a business to make an impact, whatever that looks like, plus your family, plus you. You is so important. So it's a so I now work, yeah, with entrepreneurial moms to support them to create success on their terms, whatever that looks like for you. And um yeah, and we do, I'm like you, I want to do the deeper work. It's about the deeper work. I'm not about creating this something that's not sustainable. It's about creating a sustainable lifestyle, because most people go into the business and they want it to be sustainable. They want to have several years at it, several
Mhm.
years, maybe several decades, because if it's a
Yeah.
soul-led purpose and a
Mm.
passion and a calling, then even if it changes a little bit or changes route, you still want him to follow that deep calling from your soul. And it has to be sustainable, otherwise it's just going to fall apart and you're going to hate it, and it's going to be like me where you lose your passion for it. But
Mhm.
I want it to be sustainable and in a way that nurtures your family, nurtures your relationship if you have one, and most of all nurtures you along the way.
I love that. Thank you so, so much. And this is another reason why I think I resonate so much with you. Do you remember I said that I built that program in 2021? So
Yeah.
that program, which I then ended because it wasn't nervous system stuff. Do you know what it was called? It was called An Extraordinary Life on Your Terms.
Ah, really?
Yeah, because we get so much conditioning around the rules we're meant to follow and who we should be and all the rest of it. And actually having a space to be given permission to break out of that box and be like, well, actually, what does success on my terms look like?
Mm.
I've got kids. I want to have a business. I want to be a successful entrepreneur, but I also want to be a great mum and a great partner and a great whatever the relationship is that I have with myself. Like, I actually want to live my life just for me too. And I think it's so important. And I think a lot of the time it's missing
Mm.
because if it isn't all the business, then you've failed at life.
Yeah. I
And
know.
for me, that's not success.
And I hear it so often, and I hear it so often to mums. You have to, if you're not all in your business, then you're never going to, you're not fully committed. And most people who have children, they're not go that feels really that's a real conflict of I have to go all in my business, so therefore I have to park my children into a scheduled hour a day. Well, it doesn't work like that. You get a call from school to say your child is sick, or, like me, you homeschool, whatever. But it doesn't always, it doesn't feel right to have, and I mean, deep down, we know it's not right to be sacrificing ourselves. We know it's not right to be burning out. And we've got that conflict as well of like, well, I have to, do that for so long. And then when my business is a success, I can finally come back and look after myself. But you're on that hamster wheel. It's way harder to get off when you're in an 8-figure business than it is a little bit less down the track to actually start to nurture yourself from the bottom up. And then if you go on to that
Yeah.
success, amazing, but have the foundations in place.
Yeah, and it's always one of the things that interests me when people are talking about like working really long days and not sleeping and all the rest of it. And they're like, well, but when you're on your deathbed, you aren't going to wish that you'd slept more. And I always think, no, but when I'm on my deathbed's actually going to come 20 years later because I did sleep more and did look after myself. And my deathbed's going to come after like a life where I was healthy. So it's like, but it is just like having this alternative view, being sufficiently connected with self so you can like hear that noise and be like, yeah, but also
Mm.
because I've done the burnout thing, I've done the not being very well thing. Like I'd rather not that be in my life, like however long it lasts. So
Yeah.
I should putting me first, whatever that looks like, whatever amount of rest that looks like, has got to be number one goal.
Yeah, and it's funny, I've never heard anyone saying that I won't be wishing I'd slept more, because actually, you know what? Sleep is a pretty delicious thing.
Mm, yeah.
Because I've also never heard anybody saying, "Oh, I wish my coffin was more, gold lined or something." It's like you can only bring so much with you. There is, and for your children, most kids would say, "I wish my parents had spent more time with me, then I wish they'd left more money behind for me."
Yeah. Yeah. One of my biggest challenges with making money is that I grew up in a household where my dad had his own business and it did well. And he did
Mhm.
sell it for 7 figures when I was a teenager. And when I look back, do I wish he'd been happier, more regulated, more able to be present? Yeah, I do, actually. Or could, like, and so for me, there isn't this thing of like money buys you happiness. I'm like, no, I've seen what money does. Now, that absolutely is a limiting belief for me because it's just one example in my family of origin. But it is just interesting in terms of like different perspectives on it and what really matters. But you're absolutely right. Kids do not need more presents at Christmas and more fancy holidays. They need more of like their parents being available for them
Mm,
with whatever they need. 100%. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting, and it's interesting how our childhood money experiences influence, and impact, and sort of still filter through, even when we've done lots of healing work around them.
Yeah.
They're still there because they were our experiences. You can heal them, but you can't get rid of the experience that they had in our lives. And because I grew up in the opposite experience, where like we really didn't have much money growing up at all. And so for me, money is a security thing. So I've had to really confront that when I haven't been working, of okay, and my husband has his own business as well. So it's
Mm,
really interesting where we get to again, we get to confront and look at where we limit ourselves, and the things that can potentially hold us back and
yeah.
keep us in this security blanket or this safety blanket, but may potentially be keeping us small, or may potentially be keeping us in a place that doesn't feel very authentic for us, just
Yeah.
because it feels safer.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Avril, and for sharing so much. If people want to find out more about you, where should they go? We'll make sure this goes in the show notes as well. What's the best way to come and find you?
Probably Facebook. I'm also on Instagram,
Okay.
and for now, not quite sure. Still playing around with the platforms I'm on.
Yeah. I'm
I'm
thinking about ditching Instagram actually.
Yeah, it feels like a huge big, it feels like a really, just doesn't feel as personal as Facebook.
Mm,
But yeah, that's part of my experimenting this
yeah.
since coming back, is where feels really good, where do I feel like I'm actually, because I've got some beautiful people that I'm connected with on Instagram as well. So and they're not on Facebook. So it's
Yeah.
about, but also doing what really feels right for me. So Facebook's probably the best place, and I'm just there, Avril Brown, I think. Yeah,
Brilliant.
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
on
we'll get
Instagram,
the right link in there.
yeah,
Say that again, sorry, because I talked over you. I was just going to say we'll get the link for your proper, like your Facebook on the thing, because I imagine there might be a few Avril Browns out there.
yeah. I imagine that probably are. On Instagram, I'm Avril1Brown.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much. Well, come and find us. Let us know what you made of the episode today. We would love to know, and I will see you very soon. Take care. Thanks, Avril.
So thank you. See you.
Bye.